Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Clear here with a knife review for you. I've got the Camillus 8.25 inch carbonitride titanium folding knife. That's a mouthful, and I've got to say that's the name if you look it up on various websites, but it really isn't a name, it's just a description. So that's kind of one of those things that fails off the bat. I'll have to send a memo to the marketing department at Camillus to say, you got to give the thing a name. It'll sell a lot better. Anyway, the stats on this knife are 8.25 inches, as the description kind of lets you know about right off the bat. The blade is 3.5 inches. It weighs 4.9 ounces, and it's a little less than 3/8 of an inch thick. The most websites have listed at 0.43 inches, which means nothing to most people. It's a little less than 3/8 of an inch, so fairly comfortable to carry around. The blade is pretty cool on this model. It's a Tanto blade, and I've got to say, I think I've kind of referenced this before in a video, but I'm more and more impressed all the time by the usefulness of Tanto knives. I'm still not a huge fan of them, and knives that I really like, that I'm really attracted to their looks and their feel, generally are spear points or draw points. But this knife, I cannot fault it for functionality. The Tanto blades really do excel at almost every cutting task, with maybe the exception of food preparation, and that's more because of the grind on this blade. I'm sure you could design a Tanto knife that would excel in that. This knife, the only limitation in terms of cutting is when you're holding it. If you can see how my fingers are kind of past where the blade is here, that's true on most folding knives, but because this is straight, there's no belly, it's a little harder to overcome that. Now, most of us don't use our knives for food prep anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The carbonitride titanium coating on this blade is pretty good. Camillus really markets it as just being a great coating, and I'm not going to really argue with them, because in my experience, it's been good. I've cut lots of things with this. I pushed it through lots of different materials, and if I give you kind of a close look there, you can see some very, very minor lines that are just kind of left over there, but no damage at all to the coating, and so presumably it'll keep doing that. We'll see as time goes by. So that's pretty good. The thumb studs are really, really, really good in terms of placement. They really allow you to get your thumb in there with no problems, and that's one of the frustrations I have with a few knives that I own. The thumb studs, the Rat Model 1 is a good example, where it's hard to get your finger in there, and then the detent is pretty strong, so you can only get a small amount of your finger in there, and then it's hard to get out in addition to that. This is very, very smooth deployment, very easy to get out, and so that's definitely a win. And the blade steel on this blade is a huge win, probably the best blade steel for the price in any blade that I know of, and I don't know how you would beat it, because this is a VG10 steel. See if I can get that on camera. There you go. VG10 steel, which is a high-end steel, yet this is definitely priced as a value folder in most places. Now, I'll comment on that a little further when we get down to price and the US versus Canada comparison. This knife is $44, and VG10 blade steel is just unheard of. Normally you're not finding VG10 on under $70 or even $100 is more normal. So very, very good blade on this, and although maybe the look of it we could say could be improved a little, I'm not going to complain, because the main thing is that it functions well. Anyway, carry on to the handle. The handle is G10 scales. It's a liner lock. Those liners are not milled out at all, although I am thinking I'd like to take this knife apart and drill those out on my own to save some weight, as well as make the lanyard hole a little bigger. The lanyard hole is just too small to really be functional, and on an all black knife, a brightly colored lanyard is kind of valuable, because it's easy to drop this thing and not be able to find it again. But if you've got like a bright green or bright orange paracord lanyard on here, it would be much, much easier, and you wouldn't be as much risk of losing it. Not that there's always a risk of losing your knife or dropping it somewhere you just can't get, but the lanyard would be a little bit beneficial, especially on an all black knife like that, because it's going to be harder to find, especially if you drop it like in the woods or in a dark place. The pocket clip is good and bad. It's good in terms of retention. It goes in and out of pocket very easily, and yet it just it's not at risk of falling out at all. So the pocket clip just nails it in terms of retention and in terms of ride, because it's a very, very low riding pocket clip. If you carry this on the right side, you can see that your jeans are going to be right about there, and the only bit of this is the only thing you're going to see of the knife. On the left side, it's a little different. You're going to get some of the top of the handle there, but even then it's still a pretty low carry knife, which I really, really like. Here's the drawback. If you look there, there are no holes anywhere else. This is a single position pocket clip, and I know for some of you guys that's a big deal. I'm going to be honest, I have a number of different knives and I have them carried in different variations in terms of where the pocket clip is. None of them bother me. I really don't find this to be an issue, but I know some of you really do, so you need to know that that's a single position pocket clip, not movable in any way. Now, the last thing to talk about is the price on this, and the price in Canada is $44. That is outstanding for a knife of this quality. The fit and finish is good. The blade steel is amazing. So VG10 comes razor sharp. And actually, most of the time before I do this video, I've sharpened the knife, but because of the higher end blade steel, I haven't needed to sharpen this yet. And I've been using it quite a bit. It's still razor sharp as it came from the factory. There's no real issues on this knife in terms of, you know, quality or comfort or anything like that. So $44 price point is amazing, and puts it in a very, very high value category. Now, I've got to say this. In the US, and this may be the only thing in the known universe that costs less in Canada than it does in the US. In the US, Amazon.com price is $47, so that's $3 more, and those are American dollars, which of course are worth more right now than the Canadian dollar. Plus, off of Amazon, when you go look at other retailers, and I've looked at a couple of them, this knife is about $60. So it's, you know, it's a little more expensive in the US, and I'm sure partially that's because of the VG10 steel. I don't know why it's so much cheaper in Canada, but if you're watching this and you live in Canada, you know, this thing is, because of that higher quality steel, this beats out a lot of really good knives like the Ontario, you know, Utilitac, Spyderco Tenacious, some of those bigger Kershaws. You know, for a similar price, all of those are, you know, $35 to $45 in Canada, and for the same price, this thing gives you a really high-end blade steel. So the value on this knife is just off the charts. It's an extremely good value. And I can tell you, yeah, we're kind of into more subjective stuff. I've carried this quite a bit. I've carried it, took it on a couple of, we were away for the long weekend and I took it with me. I've used it an awful lot, and I have no complaints about this knife. If I have complaints, I will always tell you guys. And this thing is just awesome. Especially for the price I paid. You know, I have knives that are much more expensive that I don't like as much as this. Now, well, I'm not going to do a whole lot of comparison because this is kind of solidly in the value folder category. So we're going to leave it to value folders. But great knife. You know, comfortable handle, grippy handle, great deployment. The clip is great in terms of both retention and in extracting out of the pocket. There's just, you know, there's not anything bad to say about this knife, and there's a lot of good to say. So in terms of recommendation, I would say if you're looking for a folder in that 8-inch category, which, you know, sort of a large folder, and you've been looking at value folders like the Ontario Rat Model 1s and the Spyderco Tenacious and a number of others that are out there, man, this thing has got to be on at least your list of consideration because it's a great knife, especially for that price with that blade steel. That's my take on the Camillus 8.25-inch carbonitride titanium folder. Yes, I wish it had a name instead of that, but overall, great knife for a great price. And that's all I've got for you. Make sure you give me some comments down below, especially if you're in the US and you know where to get this knife for a good price, because that's one of the things that I would say limits it in the U.S. market, is that at $60 it's competing against Enduras and Delicas and all kinds of other things that maybe would beat it. Talk to you later.